Hello and welcome to another Randomised Gaming video. I'm Random Gamer Riven and today I'm going to be providing the commentary on this one. Now this is a little bit of a special one as we're actually doing a quick comparison between the Sega Saturn European and Japanese release of Pandemonium and its Japanese release Magical Hoppers. Now without further ado, I'm just going to be quiet while this intro plays.
Pretty nasty, huh, Vargas? What should we name that one?
Shatner's toupee? What do you think, Sid? Let's see another one, Nikki.
Oh, heck, why not?
Shurka Chandomal.
That was the coolest, but it needed more firepower. Yeah, really blast one.
Well, which one should I do?
This one.
But this is a 10th level spell.
We ain't got all day. Yeah, let's go, Toots. Make with the boom boom.
Hey, Kwa Yungo Zore Korech Ba.
Uh-oh.
What in the world? This is so awesome.
I am Yongo. Yum.
That was fun. Horrible, but fun. Okay, Toots. Make with the get rid of the giant monster spell.
I don't know that one.
Check the book. Check the book.
To get rid of Yungo, seek a boon from the wishing engine.
A boon? What the heck's a boon? A wish, you idiot.
And look, here's a map. Let's go.
Okay, and there you have it. This is the European version of Pandemonium. Incidentally, I should point out this is running at 60 frames a second and at 60 Hz, as the European version can be forced into 60 Hz without an issue. So, there are a couple of interesting changes between Magical Hoppers and Pandemonium. The Japanese release, weirdly, it's often the other way around that the game gets changed for the Western release, not the Japanese around. What's happened is the Japanese release was done by Bandai and they changed actually the player characters and the opening intro and a few other minor things. It's an interesting comparison change, notably because Fargo the Jester was replaced by a more sort of superhero kind of guy, and the girl Nikki was replaced by a bunny girl, rather inappropriately. And the premise has slightly changed, whereas in this Pandemonium they're characters from a fantasy world who muck around with a spellbook that goes a bit awry. In the Japanese version it's characters from the modern world, our world, who are sucked into a sort of fantasy environment to defeat some sort of evil monster. On an interesting side note, you can hear the music's loudly playing away. This game actually got an interesting mix of transparencies and half transparencies, or net effects, and if you notice it, you've actually got transparencies and half a transparency in this opening shot here as jumping around where the shadow of the player character is half transparency, but bubble is actually a transparency, but it's only transparent when it's with the 3D layers, not the background layers. So I'm playing here as Fargo the Jester. Now interestingly, you see that little spin I did, you press B. His special attack is that he can spin, and the girl's special ability is that she can double jump. Interestingly, Fargo does a spin, but the male character from the Japanese release has it replaced with he has a ball, he curls up into a ball and charges someone rather than doing a cartwheel spin. So basically I'm going to play the first level out now, and then what I'm going to do is play the first level of the Japanese version, Magical Hoppers, having shown the intro. So you'll notice the intro in the Japanese version is actually animated. Then, after we've shown both levels, the first level in both games, we're then going to run the second level split screen side by side using the female characters. And by and large, you notice primarily the changes are to do with sort of front end and display and the player characters themselves. The actual stage design, from what I've seen so far from the early stages, there's no real major changes to it. Yeah, the Japanese protagonists, in case you're wondering, they do have name changes. They are Guppy, who is the male character, and Clam, who is the female character. Which is kind of a weird change from Fargus and Nikki. So this is the end of the first stage in Pandemonium. Now the other change at the end of each stage in the Japanese version, you get preset artwork. In the European version or the Western release, you get just the character running off screen. And here goes with the Japanese opening intro. And you'll notice it's substantially longer than the European one. And I don't actually think it's anywhere near as good. It lacks any humour. It's just sort of a classic sort of anime style intro.
アメージングランドのパワーが失われつつある影響である。そこで君に頼みがある。アメージングランド、そして君の住む世界、ひいてはこの宇宙全体を救ってはくれまいか。おお、そうか。ありがとう。だが困ったことが一つあるんじゃ。その世界には特別な波長を持つ者でなければ入ることができんのじゃ。その波長を持つ者は君の世界には男女合わせて2人しか見つからなかった。名前はクラムとグッピー。どんな2人かって会えばわかるよ。だが2人とも少々おっちょこちょいなのでな。そこで君のサポートが必要なのじゃ。その2人に君の意志を乗せて、さあ冒険の始まりだ。
So as you can see, the theme of the game is very different from the Japanese version. We've got a slightly different title screen here as well. The other main changes, aside from the opening intros and the ending cutscenes, is that when you finish the stage I mentioned earlier, you do get a much more nicer art in the Japanese version. But there we go, Clam the Bummy Girl. Now Guppy does have, the male character does still have Sid with him, although he looks completely and utterly different. Sid of course being the weird talking stick in this version as well. Although instead of being a jester's sort of comedian thing, he's actually a magical stick. And there we go, smashing the statue again. So as you can see, visually, graphically, it's the same. As a little bit of trivia, I did actually check the build notes on both releases, and the Japanese version registers Magical Hoppers version 1.056, and the European version Pandemonium is 1.300. There's a little bit of trivia there. Incidentally, if you want to check the headers, you need a header reading program. But both, according to the actual headers, Magical Hoppers was released just before Pandemonium, at least in Europe. Don't have a Japanese US version to compare it against, but this footage is captured directly from the European and the Japanese version. And it is actually a really enjoyable platform game. It's one of those franchises that I think got a bit lost, but it's actually a very solid platform, makes some good use of 3D. It still keeps the game on a 2D plane, but it does make some good use of 3D. As a type of style of platform you don't really see these days as well. And that's how you've got sort of the turning angles and the indirect left and right. And as you can see, here's the nice stage clear art for the Japanese version, which I think is actually better than the European, just the animated model. Now, finally, we have our split screen comparison of the second level in the game. I hope you enjoy it, and it's interesting to see the differences. There's not actually a huge amount of changes between them, as you'll notice, but it's just nice to see how they run. And yeah, I tried to keep this in sync as much as possible, but unfortunately that's very tricky unless you've got a macro and have got an exact playthrough side by side. hope you enjoy this video, and please subscribe to Randomised Gaming and follow our blog.